That's the case often listed against the Fourth Amendment. Wasn't that raised in Ross Ulbricht's case?
Yes, almost certainly. I don't remember reading it specifically in the briefs for Russell Ulbricht, but a good lawyer would have been absolutely right to bring that up. Yeah. Carpenter was this case where, and it was maybe early 2000s. No, I guess 2012 maybe. So cell phone providers like AT&T and Verizon here in the U.S. they know where all their subscribers are 24/7 with like geographic precision of feet. Like they know I'm standing in my bedroom right now because my phone is triangulated between the 3 cell towers that are giving it signal. And so the practice in the 90s and the 2000s was if the local police want to just find out where I am at any given time, they don't need to get a warrant from a judge. They can just send a letter or get on the phone with Verizon and be like, hey, where's Peter? Or even worse, they could be like, somebody got hurt on this block in Washington, D.C. Tell us every one of your cell phone subscribers that was in that area within an 8-hour period. And this kind of like mass surveillance power is exactly what the warrant requirement was supposed to fight. It was our constitutional response to the king sending redcoats into houses and rifling through patriots' papers to find people who weren't paying their taxes. It's like, no, there can be a process to find tax evasion, but it should be a process that involves a judge before the soldier just walks into the home and like starts rifling through papers and scaring people. And so, the Supreme Court, it hears this case Carpenter about cell phone location data, and it says, all right, in the past, we've said once you hand your private information over to a corporation like Verizon, there's no right to a warrant. Government can just search that information willy-nilly. We can't have that be the way things work anymore, because then there's no privacy, because everybody uses a cell phone, which means everybody's location history will be perfectly preserved and available without a warrant 24/7. And so that was the first time the court was faced with this in the world of the internet, in the digital age. Do we really have no more right to a warrant because we happen to do everything over a computer, which means we happen to give up all this information to third parties? That can't be. So let's narrow these things, And the funny thing about crypto is also a response to that, right? In a large part, like the evolution of the Fourth Amendment jurisprudence of the court is a response to people are doing too much with trusted entities, and that means they don't have a right to privacy anymore. And Bitcoin's response to that is, we should just build better systems that mean we don't have to give this information to trusted entities. They're both great. Like this is why I love my job, because I get to work in the crypto space where we're building tools that fix these privacy problems. And I get to work in the legal space where hopefully we can get the court to push back on these problems. The problem we have now is what I call forced reintermediation. So, I think there are people in government who see crypto's solution to this problem. Well, we'll just get rid of the intermediaries and hate it. They would disagree with the Supreme Court. They'd say, no, it's okay that we don't need a warrant to get this information from Verizon. But they also, of course, disagree with this idea that, well, maybe we wouldn't need a Verizon. Maybe we wouldn't need a JP Morgan. Maybe we wouldn't need a corporation in between. We could just have peer-to-peer internet protocols. And their solution to that, to the extent they have a solution, it's not a very realistic one, is reintroduce intermediaries. Force the Bitcoin miner to be just like JP Morgan, even though they don't do anything like what JP Morgan traditionally did. Force the software developer for a wallet to be just like Verizon and to have that kind of level of control and visibility into the users of their software that a typical service provider has. And it's a backward idea, both from a technology. It's like, let's go back to the early 90s internet or even the 80s because we need this information, because the government needs to know more about its citizens. That shows an amazing lack of faith in the citizens. Like most people are not criminals, and it shows an amazing sort of regressive tendency in like, I don't care about technology, I don't care about progress, I just want the world to be like it was. Where the government had a bunch of information about everybody, and there was no way for people to go about their lives without giving up that information.
So can you challenge the whole act, or would you just challenge its application to crypto/Bitcoin?
Yeah. So as Coin Center, our mission is to defend the freedom to innovate using crypto. And as I said, we're not usually asking for special treatment. We're not out there saying we should be regulated less strictly than banks when we're doing bank-like activities, because that creates moral hazard. The custodians of crypto are just as likely to be untrustworthy as the custodians of dollars. And so CoinCenter's mission is to say, look, just apply the same rules for our technology as you do the legacy banking sector. And that would mean the Coinbases of the world should be subject to the Bank Secrecy Act, just like JP Morgan is. But it would also mean we can't create a situation, to use the metaphor that you brought up, where a wallet manufacturer in the physical world is suddenly obligated to put like a surveillance device in every wallet they sell or safe that they sell. And we don't want that in our world, where a software manufacturer has to build a backdoor into all their software tools. The larger conversation, though, is like, maybe the BSA is a raw deal, even with respect to custodial entities and trusted entities, because it's not there to protect customers. It's just there to surveil them. And are there better ways to get at that information, or to get at that problem of illicit financial flows and terrorism? And I think there's a growing conversation that says, actually, yeah, there are probably better ways to do anti-terrorism and to do counter money laundering than just hoovering up a bunch of data about innocent people. Because the collateral consequences of hoovering up all that data about innocent people is deplatforming. Banks call it de-risking, which is a euphemism. No, you're just saying, no, I won't bank you anymore, or I'm going to freeze your account because you wrote Cuban sandwich in the memo field of your payment, or something like that, and they're a sanctioned country. And so, and also, aside from the liberty interest being really profound, like, say what you will about the Canadian truckers who were protesting the vaccine mandate in Canada, was it right for the government to, without any legal process, just freeze all their bank accounts because they were protesting with their trucks? Probably not.
No.
The other problem here, even if you're not concerned about the liberty interest of these financial surveillance laws, is just the compliance costs and the degree of inefficiency. So if every financial transaction needs to be vetted 5 times over before it can be allowed to enter the canonical ledger of the global financial system, the global financial system will stop running. It just will break.
Yep.
And identity is a terrible tool because it's extremely cheap to forge an identity, to create a fake passport or a fake driver's license or a fake attestation of that to your financial institution. And the costs of trying to get around that cheap fraud are incredibly high. And so, like, what are we going to do in a world where machine learning means even a video in-person identification session, which is now considered the gold standard? It's like $5 per ID or something like that from these cybersecurity providers, where even this video conversation could be faked. Like, if you're my bank and I'm your customer and you're trying to make sure I'm me, you're like, Peter, look to the right, look to the left. Yep. But I could be AI. I could be a large language model right now, and you wouldn't necessarily know. So we're going to spend a fortune trying to keep proving that people are who they are, and every transaction has a name attached to it that's a real name. It's not going to work. And we're just going to waste a ton of money and violate everyone's privacy in the process. And people who are sophisticated, who can set up a shell corporation with like 5 levels of fake names and fake organizations on top, are still going to get away with it. It's just a perverse outcome where the worst among us have privacy because they're sneaky. And those of us who are just trying to use regular systems as regular people inevitably get subjected to this mass warrantless surveillance regime, and everything we do ends up in a database somewhere.
Ugh. So what is the next steps on this?
Yeah. So as I said, it's, this report about the non-delegation doctrine and the Bank Secrecy Act is sort of prep for a future lawsuit. If, say, Elizabeth Warren's legislation that classifies Bitcoin miners as Bank Secrecy Act regulated was to pass, we would challenge it on Fourth Amendment grounds.
Okay.
If it was not to pass, and right now we're optimistic that that's not going to become law anytime soon, although it can always change. As I said, the regulators in Treasury, some of whom are sympathetic to the Senator Warren's views here, could just do this by rulemaking. Without Congress passing a law, they could treat miners or software developers as BSA regulated, which is insane.
Right.
If that happened, we would bring a lawsuit where we say, this is unconstitutional. Like, in our constitutional system, Congress makes these highly consequential decisions. The executive branch can't just do it with delegated power from Congress. And we'd say, and therefore, as applied here, the Bank Secrecy Act is unconstitutional because it gives too much power to the president to decide who it does and does not apply to. And that wouldn't mean that the whole BSA just suddenly blows up, like in some video game. It would mean that that particular agency action would be deemed unconstitutional. And the BSA going forward if you want to include new entities within the surveillance ambit, you need Congress to make that decision. You can't just have the agency do it through rulemaking. So it would be a sort of minimum viable lawsuit to stop this kind of really bad outcome for crypto. But it would also open a larger discussion about the BSA in general.
So do I need to read the 62-page report?
No.
I can imagine it's quite dense. No, I can take a look.
I mean, so it's dense, but if you find constitutional history and the evolution of these doctrines interesting, it might be an engaging read. I like to think I'm a decent writer. I actually got a really nice compliment from Niall Ferguson. A brilliant Scottish economic historian. He read our Fourth Amendment, a 2009 report, and said it's one of the best reports he's read this year, which is actually like he's like an academic hero of mine. So that was pretty great. So I'm tooting my own horn, but there are folks who think that it's interesting reading, and he's not a lawyer, so hopefully it's interesting reading.